After years of rumors, speculation, leaks, and its release, the PlayStation 5 Pro is finally here, and let's get right into it. Now, as of the making of this video, the PS5 Pro represents the most powerful console hardware on the market, but it's also the most expensive at $699 retail here in the US, and that is without a built-in Blu-ray disc drive. Now, the PlayStation 4 Pro arrived at a turning point in the market. Many customers were adopting to 4K televisions, and Sony updated their PS4 hardware mid-cycle to take advantage of this advent of 4K resolutions. The PlayStation 4 Pro offered a faster CPU clock, memory bandwidth, and a faster GPU as a result, and games looked better on the PS4 Pro. Textures in Spider-Man on the PS4 Pro were significantly cleaner than the regular PS4, for example. The PS5 Pro comes with enhancements over the base PS5, but it may not be as immediately noticeable as you would expect. Both systems support 4K out of the box, and while there is talk of 8K titles running on the PS5 Pro, I'm not really going to address that in this episode because no one in the world I know personally even owns an 8K device. I think Sony's push for 8K really should be in the next generation, but the PS5 Pro does come with its own enhancements. The boosts come in the form of visual fidelity improvements, GPU performance enhancements, and enhanced ray tracing features. AI-assisted game upscaling technology called PSSR hopes to do for PlayStation what DLSS is doing for Nvidia GPUs, and the initial batch of PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced patches have already rolled out, and the results are a bit of a mixed bag. Certainly, it's up to the developer to determine how much work is needed to enhance their PS5 title that's already shipped, especially as you consider that most studios have moved on to whatever games they're currently working on and have to deploy a team of a few developers to retroactively enhance PlayStation 5 games with Pro patches, and simply put, that won't really offer the same performance and visual fidelity across the board. But let's go ahead and take a look at a few examples. So the PlayStation 5 Pro has an enhanced GPU with 67% more compute units, faster RAM, and which in turn Sony says makes the system to be around 45% more powerful than the base PS5. Unfortunately, however, this isn't the same as dropping in a new GPU into your PC and seeing those immediate enhancements in terms of visuals and performance. Instead, because of how console hardware works, each game requires a PS5 Pro patch to unlock these new features. These patches will then update the game to open up more graphical presets to enable things like PSSR, for example, which can have the benefit of applying Sony's AI upscaling along with increased GPU and memory performance to smooth out frame rates. This is one of the benefits of the PS5 Pro over the base hardware, and it does exactly what it's advertised to do. With a good PSSR implementation, it can be a big difference in visual fidelity as compared to the base PS5. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is one such game, probably the game right now that is the showcase of what is possible with a good PSSR implementation. Now, way back when, earlier this year, I beat the entire game in performance mode when it released, and there were many times where I felt like the image looked like smeared Vaseline on my screen. So I was very much happy to see an enhanced Final Fantasy Rebirth appear on the PS5 Pro. Not to mention, even in performance mode, that the 60 FPS is the target. Unfortunately, the base PS5 isn't capable of locking at 60, especially in the outdoor areas. And this is all fixed up thanks to the PlayStation 5 Pro with its enhanced GPU and its PSSR implementation. And this can be a really awesome first impression of what the PlayStation 5 Pro can actually do. Sony's been hard at work to offer over 50 PS5 Pro enhanced games at launch, with more being announced almost every day. One thing I did notice, however, is that a PS5 Pro enhancement patch doesn't necessarily imply that it's going to use PSSR and improve fidelity. One great example of this is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster added PS5 Pro ray tracing support in the update, but there's no mention of any visual improvements beyond that. So although your game may get a PS5 Pro patch, I double-checked the patch notes for more information about exactly what was updated. Now, when it comes to PSSR, it does allow more games to target 4K at 60 FPS or higher with fidelity presets applied. Stellar Blade is one game that opens up additional preset modes purely for the PS5 Pro, and the visual upgrade can be quite noticeable. The shimmering and noise on the base version is all but gone on the PS5 Pro version. In other tests that I ran, I didn't notice as much in terms of fidelity improvements. The Last of Us Part 2, for example, was one game that looks superb on base PS5, but it's really hard to tell if there's any real difference in terms of visual fidelity on the PS5 Pro version. You really just have to look for it. The base PS5 performance runs at an almost like 60 FPS as well, so in my mind, an enhanced Last of Us Part 2 remaster isn't really that impressive. On the other hand, a game like Dragon's Dogma 2 fared much better. With its performance being a mixed bag on base PS5, the PS5 Pro patch really smooths out performance on the Pro, and this is one game that I've been waiting for a Pro patch to appear before playing it, and I'm really glad that I did. Another game that I tested was the Crew Motorfest. Now this is an interesting one from Ubisoft. Now Ubisoft is handling PSSR patches in a little bit different way, because when you update your game with the PS5 Pro patch, you'll notice that the graphics option to switch between fidelity and performance is completely removed. And what's actually happening behind the scenes here is that the Crew Motorfest and I believe other Ubisoft games, including Assassin's Creed Mirage, are basically allowing the game to use PSSR upscaling as well as what appears to be RT reflections, at least in the Crew Motorfest. And I've got to say that this is one of those games that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, and a pretty impressive showcase of what PSSR can do. Another game with a recent PS5 Pro patch is Until Dawn. The brand new 1.06 patch now includes a performance/fidelity option. The game was criticized for running at 30 FPS at launch, but now thanks to the new 60 FPS patch, the game looks a lot better and runs great. It should have been there at launch, definitely, but this is certainly better late than never. So what about the games that don't have any PS5 Pro enhancements? Do they receive any boost in performance at all? Well, yes they do. There is an option for developers to boost the CPU performance by about 10% by slightly reducing GPU clocks by around 1.5%. What this means is that the PS5 Pro standard mode runs the same 8-core AMD Zen 2 hardware at 3.5 GHz, with the higher CPU frequency can now be clocked up to 3.85 GHz. Not massive, but notable in some games. And just like the PS4 Pro Boost mode, the PS5 Pro can also offer some additional performance for free. Games can still take advantage of the increased GPU power that the PS5 Pro offers, and can also take advantage of the high CPU clocks on the PS5 Pro as well. Elden Ring is probably the first game that most people are thinking about when it comes to this, and on base PS5 in performance mode, as we know, the game has always struggled to keep its 60 FPS target. On PS5 Pro in performance mode with ray tracing disabled, it's much smoother. Definitely not perfect, and this particular video clip, even though it does lock at 60 FPS, is not indicative of the entire game. But as you can see, the PS5 Pro is probably the best way to enjoy Elden Ring on console to date. And this is one game that many of us would like to see a dedicated PSSR update for, but as it stands, it still runs much better than what we have here on base PS5. Another interesting test I tried was Silent Hill Short Message. Now this game features an uncapped frame rate, but a fixed 4K resolution, and as such, its frame rate is quite erratic on base PS5. Here in the early part of the game with the PS5 Pro Game Boost, you can see that the frame rates smoothen out quite a bit. Now I haven't tested later parts in the game that do chug quite a bit as well, so it would be interesting to see the comparisons of Silent Hill The Short Message in later parts of the game. Silent Hill 2 is another game that doesn't support PS5 Pro yet. The introduction sequence as James is walking towards Silent Hill, the game fails to lock at 60 FPS on base PS5. Now with this PS5 Pro Enhanced Edition, and that's what it's saying here on the store page, there's really not much difference other than the frame rate is smoothed out, so we do get a 60 FPS experience here at the beginning of the game, albeit with a few drops here and there. But unfortunately, I don't believe that this game is actually PS5 Pro enhanced in any way, because all you need to do is take a look at the resolution of the game as well as the reflections in the game, and you can see that there's really no enhancements that have been done here at all. So if this is actually the enhanced patch that has been applied, then this is quite disappointing. Now, the PS5 Pro also comes with another feature to enhance the image quality on older PS4 games. Now, this on paper is a nice value add for the hardware, but Sony also mentions that not every PS4 title is supported. Now, with my testing, it appears to be some type of image sharpening shader and not really much else. And the thing is, I can't really tell the difference in any of the games that I tested. I even tried this on a few 2D pixel style games to see if I could trip up the enhancer, with no avail. Now, the game that I'm running here, The Evil Within 2, should be a good candidate for this, as its uncapped frame rate means the game also runs great on the PS5 Pro, but it's almost impossible to find any sense of sharpening on the enhanced image on the right hand side. Now, I have seen reports that games such as Bloodborne can benefit from the PS4 image enhancer, but this option for me really seems similar to the snake oil upscalers that are out there, such as the M Classic, that don't really do anything in real world tests. And the only way to really notice anything is to pause frames, zoom in 300% to really notice the difference. If there's a good test bed of games that take advantage of the PS4 image enhancer, then let me know in the comments below. For me, this feature really is just some type of sharpening shader that doesn't have any benefit in real world tests that I've attempted, at least with my experience. So in conclusion, if you're an enthusiast that wants the best image quality and performance in a game console, then by all means, the PlayStation 5 Pro represents something that you want to buy. It's a system that will provide that experience for you, but its gains in the real world are really about 15 to 35% in terms of performance. And in some scenarios, you really won't notice anything at all. For me, the biggest drawback is that there's no tangible CPU boost in terms of clock speed to differentiate it from the base PS5. Now, with the 10% or so performance boost, it's a nice feature and does offer some out-of-the-box performance gains without any PS5 Pro patches. It's simply just not enough. The disappointment is only exacerbated when we start to see PS5 Pro games that have difficulty locking at 60 FPS, even with PSSR. Now, the gains are there, sure, but my understanding and the point of the PS5 Pro was to offer customers enhanced 60 or 120 FPS visuals combined with fidelity presets. But the real difficulty I have in recommending the PS5 Pro to anyone outside of enthusiasts right now is that the hardware is geared towards games that don't exist yet. None of the games that we've seen here and various other reviewers were ever built with the PS5 Pro in mind. In fact, many of them started out on the PlayStation 4, and with Sony's lack of first-party offerings in recent times, it does make me wonder how many actual enhanced PS5 Pro games that were developed from the beginning with the hardware in mind that we will actually see. And of course, we have to talk about the price again. This should be a professional grade product, the top of the line, the absolute Mac Daddy. Its lack of Blu-ray drive is a huge L. Sony's basically telling us to revisit our old games to take advantage of image enhancements, game boost, and organic performance boost on the PS5 Pro. But if you were invested like many of us by using physical media, then you'll need to spend an additional $80 for the drive itself, or rebuy these games digitally. It's really just not good enough. The drive add-on and stand should have come bundled with the PS5 Pro out of the box, and I can't stress that enough. The $700 price tag is an absolute deal breaker to many of you, and I certainly understand that. It's hard to really recommend the PlayStation 5 Pro to anyone right now. The entire generation with the Xbox Series and PS5 just seems like the hardware makers are bringing out hardware even before the games, and we saw barely a launch lineup of games when the Xbox Series and PS5 launched a few years ago. Now with the PlayStation 5 Pro, the same seems to be true. We're retroactively fitting these patches into old games that we've already played, and there's no real killer app for the hardware right now. Many are expecting GTA 6 to be that game next year, and it could very well be, but it's more likely to be CPU bound due to its open world nature, which means outside of some visual fidelity improvements and ray tracing features, it may not be possible. At the end of the day, Sony really needs to show up with some compelling reasons why you need a PS5 Pro, and while there's definitely some good games and some good moments here that do look and perform better, there's no question about that. We just really have to wait and see what the future holds. Look, in the end, I'm glad I bought my PS5 Pro. I'm happy with the system. But for the majority of you that are thinking about getting a PlayStation 5 Pro and you're happy with your PlayStation 5, then it's really just not worth the money. If you're also someone that is new to the PlayStation ecosystem and you are thinking about getting a PS5 or a PS5 Pro for the first time, I simply can't recommend a $700 console at this time. I think your best option is just to go with the PS5 Slim and spend a lot less money and get just about the same user experience that you would regardless. But they're just my thoughts and opinions on the PS5 Pro. The last thing I do want to mention is this PS5 Pro is not a sponsored review. It was not sent for me. This was a system that I bought out of my own money. And we're going to leave it here. Let me know your thoughts on the PlayStation 5 Pro. Do you have a PS5 Pro? And give me your take on it, how you're faring with the system. It's been about 4 or 5 days since the launch, and I did want to sit down with the system and really just kind of get used to it and play around with it for a few days before giving you my thoughts. But we're going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to leave me a like, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.